Hello, I'm George Wang, Chief Marketing Officer with Peterson Technology Partners. Today we have MQ Qureshi, Head of Global Product Innovation and Strategy with Buck Global. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks, George. It's a pleasure.
I know you want to talk to us about customer journey and data. I'm looking forward to hearing from you on this great topic.
When we think about data, part of the complexity is in just that fact. There's a lot of it out there. Instead of being intimidated by it, what we have to think about is that ultimately, what are we seeking from that data? And that's three things. That's immediacy, relevancy, and accuracy. So when we think about that, that puts us in a different space because now we have to contextualize the data and make it work for us. It's not just about looking back. So a lot of times, when we look at business and ecosystems in general, we would look at information and look at it from here's what we did. Now we're in the mode of thinking about understanding what we did, tell us what we're going to do. You confront that reality and you go, okay, how do I get the best source of information to tell me where we're going? I look at the sheer amount of data that I have. How do I sort out what is most immediate, what is most relevant, what is most accurate to me? So to me, this comes across in two ways. One, as an organization, you need to think about how to structure your organization so that you can take the best use of what's being put in front of you. There's three organizational models that really, companies use to sort this out. One is a centralized model, the other is a decentralized model, and the third is a center of excellence. What are these three organizational models? So when we take the centralized model as an example, generally what tends to happen is that you have a central analytics team that are available for the entire company. These group of resources have access to all the data sources that are out there, and individual departments approach them and say, here's what I want. And they take some time and they posit some theories and they look at what you're looking to do. They look at the data sources and they provide reports. This can be very, very important because what it does is that it centers it down into one source of truth. And these resources can then look at data in a consistent way. The problem is that the data sources are usually, the data teams are usually very scarce. They're usually overworked. They tend to have to prioritize all the time. And the amount of information coming back can be very slow. So other organizations move to a decentralized model. And in the decentralized model, you have those data sources, but your data and analytics individuals and experts are embedded inside each department. And that way they can get to know that department, they can get to know what that department's needs are, they can work with the data sources and get things back in a much quicker way. It sounds fantastic, but the other problem that becomes with it is that oftentimes departments are siloed and data is not being shared across all three. And so what ends up happening is that sometimes data is changed or massaged for sake of optics, and we don't end up getting consistent data that is very useful when it's rolled up. The third model is Center of Excellence model, and it's a model that's actually being used by companies like Walmart. The Center of Excellence model is a hybrid of the decentralized and centralized model, and in my opinion, probably the most effective. In this situation, the data analysts and the data scientists are embedded within each department. So great, they get to know the department, they get to analyze the same data sources, but it's under the guidance of a center of excellence that sets the broader rules and sets the rules of engagement and consistency so that when they're working, it's not siloed, information is shared, and then it's put up in a consistent way to leadership so that they can make the best decisions quickly.
I've heard this term reactive to proactive to predictive, and you want to try to move all the way to predictive where you can actually predict what might happen versus just being proactive to prevent something. What other thoughts do you have, MQ?
Reactive is where we used to be. I believe right now we are trying to be proactive, and the goal is to get to predictive. Now, that being said, you can't look at data alone to guide you because then you'll always be reactive. And you can look at data and it'll give you some information so you can act in, when you see trends start to happen. But how do you get to predict where the trend's going to go? And so for that, you need to contextualize, and that's where customer journeys come in. In my opinion, this is the most powerful set of tools that a company has right at its fingertips. And that's identifying what your customer does on a regular basis. So if you think about the experience of your customer, what are they trying to achieve? When are they trying to achieve it? And how can you help them get there as quick as possible? They don't do it in a siloed way. They don't only interact online. It's multiple channels, it's multiple journeys, etc. But you need to be able to frame it and put it in a way that it makes sense. So how do we do that? I call this the action-based journey map. And so what you're doing is that you're looking at what your customer action is that you're driving to. And that is largely based on what are they trying to achieve. So how do you get that information? It's talking to customers, it's going out in the field, it's putting your product managers at the forefront that they get that info. Once you've mapped that down, then you can start to layer and say, okay, here are the steps. What all goes on? What channels does all of it go on in? What are the analytics and data sources that I have? What are the systems that support each step of the journey? And what are the KPIs that I use to measure? Once you have it down, now you're in a position to understand what your customer is doing. Now, when you take all of that data that you have, you've now contextualized it to the steps. You're now understanding how your customers are moving from one step to the other, and you can really start to remove the silos and use that data to drive to the action, which ultimately is to fulfill what that customer's desire is.
MQ, customer experience is so important. It's something that I'm very passionate about myself. And I know that you had worked at some iconic brands like McDonald's and W. Granger, all of which are known for great customer experience. Share with us a little bit more about that journey.
There are three steps that I would encourage everybody to do. The first thing is organizational optimization. Start with creating or working towards creating that center of excellence. The second part is around contextualization. So embrace and share that multi-event, multi-channel customer journey. And then the third step is actually experience it for yourself. Get out into the field, sit with your customers, experience it, acknowledge it, and make sure everybody, not just the people that are interacting with customers, but everybody in the organization gets to do it on a regular basis. That'll give them a true feel for what the business is. And when they're making decisions on a day to day basis, will influence what they do in a positive direction.
I really like that, MQ. It seems so obvious that you need to be in touch with the customer. And to do that, you have to be out there and you have to engage with them, not just certain people like salespeople sometimes you think about, but everybody, so they understand what it is to be that and experience that customer experience. Thank you so much for your time today. It was wonderful to hear from you, and I'm sure our audience will learn quite a bit. Thank you.